Well, first, let me thank you all for being interested in this, being here today. We have a lot of violence going on our planet right now, whether it's what's happening in the Middle East or in Europe or in Chicago. This notion that people take matters into their own hands and make really bad decisions has really, dividing up, has really been with us ever since the very beginning. I think it was the first row cropper who killed the first herdsman because he just wasn't like him, or jealousy or something. And when Cain took Abel's life, we've been dividing up ever since. And that tribalism has been around since then. And it's interesting, if you read the book of John, Christ is in the Garden of Gethsemane about to go and die. He knows his future. He knows what's about to happen. He asks that it doesn't happen. He says, hey, take this cup from me. But he knows the will of the Father, and so he does the will of the Father. But before he goes to make that happen, in John 17, he says a prayer. So you got to figure, this is a pretty powerful or important prayer. The last one he makes before he gives his life. He prays that they, all of us, people of faith, would be unified. Because through unity, the reality of who God is presented to the world. And the enemy to God knows that too. And he goes all the way back to the very beginning and does what he had started the whole thing with, and that is disunity, dividing, splitting, pulling us apart. And that is the first step toward that violence. There's a passage in Romans where Paul is talking. He talks about how we step slowly away from God to a point where, and at each step, God kind of steps back too. And ultimately, it turns into a depraved mind where there's no concept of right or wrong. And that step begins with you looking at a brother and saying, I don't want to be connected. I don't want to be united. I want to be different. And the path back to fixing it all is really just two people. All we got to do. And you look at the division in our country, between parties, between groups. I mean, the cheerleaders or the band guys and the football guys, the jocks versus they sit and nobody bridges the gap, Politically in the discourse, Republicans, Democrats. One of the things I did when I first got to Congress was I formed a club. I called it the Reagan-O'Neill Club. Now, Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, they fought like cats and dogs during the daytime, but at night, once a week, they scheduled an opportunity to go and have a little brown water, as they say in Tennessee, where I'm from. They had some Irish whiskey, and they sat and they just talked about something other than politics. And they had a relationship that allowed them to get things done for the country, and a lot of good things happened then. Well, the Reagan-O'Neill Club that I started, we had 8 Democrats and 8 Republicans. I wouldn't let them talk policy. I wouldn't let them talk anything that divides. You could only ask about the other person's story. So where does this all begin? It just begins with starting to have a relationship with someone who thinks or views the world differently than you. Perhaps they're a row cropper and you're a herdsman. And you just ask somebody, tell me your story. And this is on the individual level. On the leadership level, we can see examples of where it doesn't work. You go to the Middle East and you tell a nation, we're not going to continue our relationship with you, and we're going to make friends with another nation, and an imbalance occurs and one country becomes more powerful than another. You get what happened in October a few years ago. The goal is unity, because unity begets peace. Peace with each other, and of course, peace with the God who created all of us. And all it takes is someone willing to ask somebody else, tell me your story. And if we're all willing to do that, and leaders are willing to do that, well then we can get to peace. And put some of our judgments and opinions aside for just a moment and connect with another person on a human level. We all got kids, and everybody wants the same thing for their kids: peace. And Christ had it right. The issue is division, and that division has been the tool of the enemy since the beginning of time. So if you sense yourself clinging to something that might divide, you might ask yourself, do I need to really have that thought in my mind? Because that thought that divides just might lead to bad choices. Might mean you don't greet someone a certain way on a street. Could mean anything, really. Unity is at the heart of peace. You don't have peace until you have a mentality of unity, and you don't have unity if you don't act on it. But I'm kind of preaching to the choir because you're here. You're here. And so if we just have to talk about it. And that's why breakfasts like this are so important. We can have a dialogue about peace, about unity, about what that looks like every day you go to work. This notion that we form stereotypes is very human. It is very human to do that. It's also very divisive. Just because I meet 9 people from Mars that like strawberry milkshakes doesn't mean the 10th Martian I meet is going to like strawberry milkshakes. Regardless of the statistics. And if we think that way, it'll shape how we behave, and that's not good. That doesn't create unity. That creates division. And so avoiding those stereotypes, avoiding even your own experiential evidence that you collect as you walk through life every day, blocks that divisive component that is in our flesh and can lead to something very beautiful happening. I think our goal should be, as Christ said, and that is that we be unified so that the world knows who God is. And by doing so, we get peace. So there's a little message from Congress. Actually, it's from the Word. But I am Mark Green, and I am the chairman of the Committee on Homeland Security. It is my responsibility to look at the threats to the nation, to the United States, and to our people. And because of how mankind is and that fallen nature and all those things, there are people who act on their own self-interests above others. And because of stereotypes and division and all of this stuff, it necessitates us to protect ourselves. We protect ourselves with friends aligning, And we do our very best to deter any expression of disunity or selfishness or whatever, however you want to look at it, evil, so that step away from God leads to depravity. And we do that through strength. And deterrence occurs by two things, and it is the product, not the sum of those two things. It is the product of willpower and capability. And nations and friends and alliances that have a capability, but no willpower, will have zero deterrence. And we saw that in Ukraine. All the capability in the world, the super might of the West, couldn't deter because a bad guy didn't think we had the will. Well, I think the West has shown a will, and we're at a unique place in this particular struggle, and that is a place where people are attempting to bring peace and bring people together. And it means potentially sitting down with people that maybe we have some ill will toward because of things they've done. But if we want peace, we're going to have to do that. And we do want peace. And it's the same in the Middle East. And so now we sit with capability and will, and a leader who will go and meet with anyone to see peace happen, but who also will meet difficulty with resolve. And that creates the willpower. It communicates the will to do what's necessary, matched with the capability, and you can get deterrence that way. We just need to support those kinds of leaders who are willing to do that. And that brings peace. So, on our own individual level, there's work to be done. And leaders that are willing to do the right thing for us, there's work to be done in supporting them. And since God picks our leaders for us, that's another reason to support them. And I think you guys know what I'm talking about. It's, again, an honor to be here. And I would like to just say a quick prayer since this is a prayer breakfast. So, if you'll bow with me. God, Father in heaven, we come before you in humility, accepting our own faults and our own tendency as human beings to act in our own self-interest, and we confess that to you. We also recognize you've asked us to rise above that and to see the person sitting across from us as a brother or a sister, as a creation of your holy hand. And we ask, God, that you give us the strength to overcome those natural tendencies of disunity and to be unified. Help us to figure out how to communicate this to others. The forces we're fighting against are spiritual. That this is a part of the painting you started in a garden long ago. And as it unfolds, it requires each one of us to act outside of our own self-interests and in the interests of the whole and in your command to be unified. And through that unity, the world will know who you are. And that ultimately is the mission of why you created us all, your own glory. God, we ask that the rest of this day will equip us with the right things to say, the right things to do, the right leaders to support, the right efforts to be a part of, in the quest for unity and the peace that comes from it. And I just pray for an incredible, uplifting day, a day that everyone here leaves informed and motivated, passionate about what is on your heart, God, which is that your people would choose you, would choose the higher things above self, above sin, above flesh. And I ask this in your Son, Jesus' name, as I pray in my faith tradition. Amen.